I was a good son. I did what I felt like I needed to do. When he was done, I got out of cars and went into real estate. People would rather go to the dentist than step onto a car lot. When I first got into real estate, I was a little bit depressed because I felt like I had just wasted 20 years of my life in that industry. You have to learn how to make friends very quickly. That thought of not owning myself was really kind of demoralizing to me. I wanted something else. So that was my first motivation.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with another episode of the Saucetown Investor Podcast. I am your host, Matt Cox, and we have a very, very special guest today. Our guest is the president of the SMI family of companies. You probably already know who he is, but I'm going to read the rest of his bio for you. One of the SMI is one of the largest real estate companies in Oregon. Our guest is considered an authority on real estate brokerage, apartment investments, creative financing structures, syndications, and repositioning underperforming multifamily assets. SMI Real Estate is a full-service brokerage consisting of 50-plus brokers focusing on residential, commercial, and business transactions. SMI Property Management, I told you there's a whole family of businesses here. SMI Property Management is the Willamette Valley's largest privately held professional property management company, managing over 5,000 residential apartment units and many commercial buildings. Then through the SMI Fund Management Company, our guest and his partners are pioneers in the 721 exchange space, which I'm going to be sure to ask about today, and manage a growing fund for investors who can either invest capital or choose to contribute their real estate holdings into the SMI Legacy Fund. Our guest also owns a large portfolio of his own, multifamily real estate valued at over $150 million and counting, totaling over 1,000 residential units. Through the combination of investment sophistication and brokerage acumen, he's considered among his peers and industry professionals as a multifamily expert. Our guest is the co-host of Deal Junkies, which is one of my favorite podcasts. I kind of feel like I've got the final junkie boss on the podcast today. I've had the other three guys. We have the one and only Gabe Johansson on the pod today. Gabe, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Where are we joining you from? Looks like I've got a nice little view off the deck there.
I'm in Salem, Oregon. Yeah, I don't know if you can see, but it's a beautiful sunny day today.
Very nice. And you just got back from Hawaii, right?
We did. Yeah, we spend quite a bit of time over in Maui. That's our two favorite spots, Salem and Maui.
Yeah, I know Maui's your special place. You kind of always go there to get a little change of pace, a little escape.
Everybody should go there. It is a special place.
Absolutely. So let's bust into it. Obviously we're going to talk a lot of real estate today, but for those who maybe don't know, or those who do know yet, just tell us a little bit about your upbringing and your background, where you grew up, and then you can kind of carry that into how you initially got into real estate.
Sure. Yeah. Well, if you haven't heard my story, I was raised in the car business. So my dad was a car dealer. I was born in California, and we were there until 1989 when we came to Oregon. We moved around quite a bit down there. He had partners, and we would move mainly between Redding and Fresno. And ultimately, he decided that he wanted to go out on his own and have his own store. And we ended up in a place called Truckee, California, which is right on the elbow of California and Nevada, where Lake Tahoe, the state divide happens right in the middle of that lake. So Truckee is on the California side. So if you ever heard of Squaw Valley and all the beautiful ski resorts that are down there, we got to live there for about a year. And my dad was hoping to build a dealership there. And we weren't able to get the development land that we needed. And we set out to find a new spot to call home. And my mom loved the Northwest. And after looking at a few places in Oregon and Washington, we ended up in Salem, Oregon. So got to Oregon in 1989. I was 14 years old. I got a special worker's permit to work at my dad's car lot. Ended up working there until I was in my mid-30s. So over 20 years. And he hired me on as a lot attendant and said, this is it. Like, if you want to work your way up, you can, but you got to be hired by the, the other managers and stuff. And so, he gave me an opportunity to get started in that business. And I'm sure I had opportunities maybe that not everybody would have, but I worked hard and I stuck around, and I got to learn business from the inside out over a couple of decades in the car business. So that's where my sales and marketing background come from. That, he ultimately decided he wanted to sell the store. I had always thought that would be my future, to be in the car business, and that wasn't in the cards. And so I was offered a chance to come into real estate by my mentor, Brian Miles, who owned SMI at the time. And I had other offers in the automotive industry, and I just really was ready for a change of pace. And so that opportunity came in 2011, just after the crash. Of course, there was not a whole lot happening in real estate at that time. And I thought it would be a great time to get in and learn about real estate, learn about investing. And his rule for me was he wasn't going to teach me real estate unless I was going to be an investor. And so I asked, my first question was, can we skip the broker part and just do the investor part? So right out of the gate, instinctually, I wanted to be an investor. And I sort of felt in my mid-30s, I felt like I may have gained a lot of knowledge and skill, but I hadn't really built anything yet. And so I felt like I was behind the curve. I had a little bit of FOMO, like, I should have been doing something else. I should have been focused on something else instead of focusing 2 decades on helping my dad build his business. And so I was a good son. I did what I felt like I needed to do. When he was done, I got out of cars and went into real estate. Brian was a special guy to me, and Brian, and of course you're connected. His best bud, Brent Culver, is a family friend of yours, which is how we met. And Brian connected his desk with mine, and he spent 4 years mentoring me and teaching me real estate, and actually started buying deals with me. We became partners and started buying some deals after I had been brokering for a few years. So I got a very special sort of mentorship that not everybody has access to. And the idea was he wanted me to become his exit partner in the SMI brokerage. This property management at that time and the brokerage were 2 separate companies, still is, but that was the 2 SMI companies at that point in time in the family of companies. And so anyway, I sat with him for 4 years and brokered deals, and I really loved, when I first got into real estate, I was a little bit depressed because I felt like I had just wasted 20 years of my life on a car lot, and now I'm going to do this whole other thing. And I thought, oh man, why did I do this? But it didn't take too long to realize that the skills that I had learned through car business translated over into real estate, and it actually gave me a competitive advantage against a lot of my peers. And so, I understood things as a business operator rather than just maybe a broker who comes in and is trying to figure out how to, make enough calls or get enough listings or do whatever. I saw things from the business perspective. So Brian sold me the brokerage in January of 2016. I've had that almost 10 years. And then they kept running their management company, which was supposed to pass down to their kids. And when COVID hit, their kids decided they didn't want to be in Oregon anymore, and they left, which opened the opportunity for me to also be their exit partner in the management side of the company. And then since then, that happened 5 years ago almost. And then since then, we've developed a syndication arm, a lending arm. And we're a full service real estate company, and we're just having a lot of fun.
Yeah, take us back to the car lot a little bit, because you talk about the first guy I worked for in real estate actually was a car lot guy, and then transitioned to real estate as well. So you can work on the car lot. You're a good sales guy. I'm sure you're making a lot of money. You're making decent money, but it's
better money than my friends were. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a constant turn and burn. Like, you got to keep selling. You pay taxes on it, all that stuff. And then you talk about transitioning to, like, I want something of my own, and I want to own it. I don't want to just be in this hamster wheel of having to close deals all the time. Was there a moment where you're like, man, I'm tired of doing this, I want to own something? Or take us through that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I guess a couple of things I really like about cars, and I've mentored some people that got into real estate, and I had them start in the car business before we went to real estate, because I think there are things that you learn in the car business that you don't learn in real estate. The training in real estate is nowhere near as brutal as what you get in real life when you go out on a car lot and get your teeth kicked in day after day. Because quite honestly, I mean, when you look at a list of like the type of industries where a customer just automatically hates the person they're dealing with, like I think that they say that people would rather go to the dentist than step onto a car lot. And I mean, that's pretty bad, right? Because most people don't really like going to the dentist. So in that industry, you have to learn how to make friends very quickly. And you have to overcome, you have to, you know, we learned a lot about building rapport, making the first impression. And you've got, you know, 10 seconds to make that first impression. If you're, you know, if you just tossed a cigarette down and you're out back smoking and cussing and spitting and joking, whatever, and you're, you know, you walk out and greet somebody and you stink and, you know, your shirt's untucked and you forgot to shave that morning or whatever, like people just automatically are going to treat you different. So we spent a lot of time in training every day. We did trainings for our salespeople. For me, what I liked about cars was it was a commission-based job. So I started in the industry as a lot attendant. And the first time I ever clocked in, I remember the sound of that time card crunching down. And at that time, when I was 14, the minimum wage was $4.25 an hour. And so I remember watching that time card go in and hearing that clunk on my time card. And I looked at it for a second. I'll never forget it. Like it just happened today. I looked at that time card and I thought to myself, like, I don't own myself anymore. Like my time now, I've just sold myself. It was never in a book I read or something that somebody taught me. It was just something that innately, I think that for me, that was my entrepreneurial spirit giving me a message that I was not designed to be an employee. I hated it from the very first second I ever did it. And so that thought of not owning myself was really kind of demoralizing to me. I wanted something else. So that was my first motivation. I really do believe that everybody should do things in their life that they don't like because I know that the younger generation has a lot of options in front of them. And usually they're like, nah, I'm not going to go, you know, I'm not going to go wash cars or I'm not going to go do landscape or I'm not going to go do these other things because, you know, it's not my passion or it's not what I want to do. Like when you're just trying to get started, a lot of it is about finding out what you don't like just as much as what you do. And quite honestly, the fire behind me today to do what I do in real estate is very much driven by the fact I don't ever want to go back to the car business. Not that, you know, I have a lot of friends in the car business and they are tremendously talented people. To make money that way is really, really hard. And the people that make money selling cars, in my opinion, I hold them to I look at them in a much different light than other industries because it is truly a very, very difficult way to make money. But it's a terrific education, and it's something you can get paid to have that education. So for people that are getting into brokerage specifically that want to transact and they want to represent buyers and sellers, it's a wonderful way to sort of, you know, cut your teeth and start off in an industry where you can make a paycheck after 30 days and not be waiting months and months to get paid. You can start to actually learn the art of sales, which it is. It's truly an art form. So you were asking, what, I forget your question. You were asking me like, was I okay with being a W-2?
The transition, if there was a moment where you were like, I don't want to turn and burn deals, I want to own something.
Yeah, so I guess from day one for me, and one of the reasons I spent 20 years doing that is I felt like it was the family business and I felt like I was an owner. And so that has a negative and positive side to it because the negative side is I wasn't an owner. And so what I was doing was I was building up a business that I thought one day would be mine. And when I found out that it wasn't going to be, I had no interest in working for somebody else in the car business. So I would say that from day one, I always had interest in ownership. I just thought my path was going to be cars. I thought I was going to be a car dealer. And so then to have the opportunity come in front of me to where I could switch over into real estate, that was a terrific opportunity for me because I was always interested in real estate. I wasn't necessarily interested in owning buildings. You listen to guys like Trevor Howard or Paul Curley, and they have this instinct where they're just like, I know I need to own a building. They know it, like they don't, you can ask them to describe why, and they have a hard time explaining it because they just know it in their soul that they're supposed to do that. I don't have that instinct. For me, it had to be learned. I had to have these mentors and these people that told me that that was what I needed to do, and that's what was cool, was to own buildings. I had no idea that what was cool. I thought, I heard people were out there making huge money selling real estate, whether you're selling houses or commercial buildings or whatever. There were people out there that were making close to 7 figures selling real estate when I got started. And I'm like, shoot, I mean, I was working, 12, 15-hour days, sometimes 6 days a week to make, maybe 100 to 150 a year or whatever, maybe sometimes a couple $100,000 a year, which at the time, comparing myself to my peers, my friends went to college, had school debt, they get out, they're making 50 grand a year. I thought I was a genius. I was making 2-3 times what they were. I was also working twice as much as they were or more. And I was working in an industry that just kicks you in the nuts every time you turn around. It's just not, the business is different today probably than it was when I was doing it. But the way we did it in a small town like Salem, Oregon, with a tertiary brand like Nissan, in a place like Market Street where, everybody needs a cosigner and has a, 450 beacon score. Like, I mean, we were dealing in subprime loans, people with negative equity, trying to find cars we could put them into. They're putting them in payments they really couldn't afford. It was really a depressing culture to be around because I got paid to sell people stuff they shouldn't be buying, basically. And even when I wanted to tell them, like, hey, this is not a good idea for you, like, I mean, it's my job to sell them the car.
Right.
And so I don't know. I don't feel like I was a very good car salesman. And it definitely was not like something that I was super passionate about. I love cars. And I love sales and I love people. I think marketing and sales is super fun. But for me, the ownership portion of it, at least when it comes to buildings, didn't come till after I was already in real estate for a few years. I did want to own business though. I wanted to make money like everybody else. And I didn't want to work for somebody else. It was even more than that. It's not that I didn't want to work for somebody else. I'm just not a very good employee. I'm not somebody that can keep my mouth shut. I share my opinion. I have ideas about how things should run. And I worked for my dad for 20 years and I watched him, and, being his son, he didn't always listen to my ideas. And I had to sort of make my ideas become his ideas before we could implement any of those. And there was a period of time where he stepped aside and he let me run the store, and the store really flourished. We had a couple of really good years, but he and I just did not see eye to eye. And I don't think that was just him. I thought maybe that's because it was dad and son and that dynamic, but I think it was really just because I was not meant to work for.
It was Gabe and insert boss here. It didn't matter if it was dad or.
Doesn't matter who it is. I could be a really great right-hand person to somebody, and I think I'd be a valuable asset to anybody, but I have to be in a position where I have some control. I have to have a vote. I don't necessarily have to own the whole thing, but I at least want to know that I have some control over my destiny. So one of the things I actually really liked about cars is, I could go out and make zero, or I could go out and make, $20,000 in a month. It was up to me how hard I wanted to work. And the same thing in real estate. It is kind of turn and burn, like you say. From the sales perspective. So as a broker, you're really doing, residential brokerage, to be honest with you, is just the car business. It is very much, evenings, weekends, husbands, wives, kids, what school district, what color's the carpet. And it's, it's very, very similar to the car business rhythm. The commercial world that I mostly transact in is quite a bit different. It's more business to business. We do things Monday through Friday. You don't call anyone before 9 or 10 in the morning. You don't call them after 3 or 4 in the afternoon. Like it's a totally different rhythm. But to own the buildings, I can tell you how the first building I bought was.
Yeah, please. That's where I was going. Take us to you start up with Brian and you start buying some deals. What was the first one? What was the fifth one?
Yeah, to talk about deals. So, I didn't know what a deal was. And I asked Brian, can we just do some investing first? And he said, no, you got to learn what a deal is. The way I saw this was, it was actually 3 years. I brokered for 3 years before we found our first deal. The first deal we found was this little shitty duplex in Albany. The roof was caving in on it. It was a former meth lab that had been certified to be inhabitable again. It was right across the street from an elementary school, which is sad to think about. And this thing was $100,000. And Brian wanted to do a deal, but I brought him hundreds of deals over 3 years and said, what about this? What about that? And no, that's not the right one. Finally, this is a deal he found. And he says, I think we should buy this one. And he says, but we got to come up with $100,000 because I don't think it's financeable or whatever. And so I went to a friend of ours, a mutual friend of ours, and I asked him if we could borrow the $100,000. And while we're at it, can we borrow an extra $25,000 to clean the place up? And so we borrowed $125,000 from a friend, no points, very little docs, put him in first position. And we went and turned those units. I worked on that. I painted that building. I did flooring in that building. I refinished the cabinets in that building. And I've never been a super hands-on labor kind of a guy. And so Brian really loved being out of the property and getting dirty and, getting on the ladder and doing all this stuff. And from the very beginning of that, I knew that I was not going to be a hands-on guy. It was not in my blood. It wasn't something that excited me to go in and actually work on properties myself. But we got a hold of this thing. It ended up needing about $40,000 worth of work. So Brian and I each had to come in with $7,500. We were short by $15,000. And so we each wrote a check. And at the moment I wrote that check, I hated ownership. I hated owning real estate. And I didn't really, know that I wanted to do it anymore. I thought this sucks. Like, I'm out here brokering deals. I'm making good money. Why do I need to buy this stupid thing? I'm over there on the weekend working on it, and then I'm writing a check. Like, this is stupid. And so eventually we got it finished. We got it rented up. And then one day, Brian brought me a check, and he handed me a check, and I think it was like $263. And I was like, what is this for? And he says, oh, it's our cash flow. And I was like, what's cash flow? He's like, oh, this is the money that our duplex made. It's throwing cash flow now. And it took me a minute to sort of grasp what was happening. And I looked at that check and I was like, oh my gosh, I love real estate. This is the best thing that's ever happened to me in my life. And so that little check, just to see had money come in, that I had already done all the work prior and put the money in, done whatever. And here I am complaining about having to write a check for $7,500, and I'm getting cash flow off of this property. That property ended up cash flowing very well. And it just got me super excited to own more buildings like that. And so immediately I went out and bought a triplex.
I was going to say, Gabe, that
I think the next one,
that 263 probably felt better than your last. I said that $263 check probably felt better than your last $10,000 car check, huh?
Oh, 100%. It felt better than any money I'd ever made before. Because every other dollar I'd ever made, I had to get up in the morning and go hit the phones and get people to hang up on me and tell me no and go through the grind of trying to figure out how I'm going to make a paycheck. And that check came and I was like, if I can duplicate this enough times, like, I won't have to grind as hard. I won't have to go hit the phones all day and go try to find. You called it turn and burn, which is a really good way to put it. Like, every day waking up with the feeling of, I'm going to go broke and not be able to eat unless I sell something. It's probably something that's really good for you, that trains you how to survive in the real world. But it's also something that gets to be super tiring, and fatiguing, just to the point where you're like, at some point in my life, I don't want to have to wake up and be like, oh my God, I got to go figure out where my next paycheck's coming from.
Hey guys, we're taking a quick break, but before we get back into it, if you're enjoying this episode, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. It really helps us to keep bringing you more valuable content. And if you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, don't forget to leave a review. Please, it makes a huge difference. All right, let's get back to it.
Yeah, so that $263 check, it inspired me. I wanted to buy more real estate. I came up with a dream that I would build $5,000 a month in passive income. Of course, we all know now that passive income in real estate is a tax term. It's not reality because there's not much passive about it. But we went out and bought, right after that one, I had the bug. I wanted to do deals. I think that check turned me into a deal junkie. And so, next one was a triplex. The one after that, a fourplex. And then we ended up buying, I think a 9-unit was the next big, that was like my biggest deal that I had done. And so, Brian and I picked up probably 30 something doors together. We ended up turning that duplex into an 11-unit complex. We sold it a couple of years later. So, you just inch it along. Paul Curley talks about just inching along day by day. It feels kind of slow in real estate. I was listening to Warren Buffett talk this morning. And he's resigning now as CEO or whatever of Berkshire.
Yeah.
And so you can tell when he's up on stage and he's talking, he's getting a little long in the tooth to be putting on these performances. But he talked about why he would do stocks over real estate. And what it all boiled down to was the timing of it. Like if you do a stock deal and you see a company that's undervalued and you want to go buy $100 million worth of that stock, you can transact in 5 seconds. There's a seller, there's a buyer, the deal just happens. And in real estate, he says it really takes a different breed. It takes a different type of person that wants to do that deal, because once you strike a deal, first off, it's hard to find the deal. It's hard to find the value. Once you find it, you put it under contract. And now really the negotiation process has just started. It's not finished. And so what normally takes a few seconds in securities might take months or even years once you get into real estate deals. And not everybody has the patience for that when he thinks about how many trades he can make over the course of a year in securities versus real estate. I could understand why, he would want to play that game. But for me, owning real estate and not being able to trade it in seconds is one of the reasons why I own it, is because it's not a highly liquid asset. It's one of the reasons why it holds such value and is such a wonderful hedge against inflation and protects us against all the money creation and stuff that they're doing to unfortunately, to the American public.
Yeah, and you touched on like the stock piece of it, buying real estate, and you can talk some about your buy box and what you look for as far as value add deals, but it kind of gives you the opportunity when you think about stocks or buying businesses, like you kind of get to be your own little activist investor. Yep. Like somebody going to buy, if you want to be an activist investor with a S&P 500 company, you better buy, $3 billion worth of stock. In real estate, you can do that with you can go buy a duplex and find a business that's not run correctly. So take us through, because I know that's a lot, if not, I feel like pretty much every deal you buy kind of fits that model. So take us through your buy box and from how you pick out a deal, and then kind of the business plan that you usually execute after you buy the deal.
So one of the things that I like to teach my people is that you don't really find deals, you attract deals. And so the law of attraction is very real, and you got to put out into the universe what it is you want. And everybody's wired different. So some people will say like, oh, well, I don't, Gabe manages all these units and does all these deals. Like, why would he bring me a good deal? Like, why wouldn't he just take that deal himself? And what's really interesting about that statement is the fact that people believe that everyone agrees on what a good deal is. And that's not true, right? And so human beings are super unique. Real estate is super unique. The buildings are unique. The structures in which you buy them are unique. The financing is unique. There's so many different pieces to that puzzle that not every deal is going to fit everyone's buy box. Now, sure, if $1 million building goes up on the market and everybody knows it's $1 million building and it lists for $500K, there's going to be 50 people that try to buy it. That's just a basis buyer. But that might not be the building that I go after. It depends on what the asset type is, where it's at, what kind of financing we can put on it, and that sort of thing. So I think that underlying, when you try to figure out what your buy box is, you really have to think about what the end goal is that you're trying to accomplish. Some people are trying to buy that $500,000, that $1 million building for $500,000 because they just want to turn right back around and sell it for $1 million and make $500,000 and move on with life. That is one type of buyer. That's just a flipper, basically, right?
Mhm.
And so I don't buy real estate to flip. To me, that's just the car business again. If I want to go flip something, I can go to the auction, I can buy some cars, I can sell them for more, I can make money. That's what I did my whole first career. It's not really the business that I want to be in. The reason why I am buying real estate is because I'm hedging my bets that the government is going to keep printing money. And people think of these buildings as going up in value, but in reality, what's happening is our money is going down in value. And so it takes more dollars to buy that building. So if I buy a $500,000 building today, in 10 years, it'll be $1 million building. It won't be because the building went up in double. It'll be because the dollar went down in half, right? A dollar became 50 cents. And so we know that government only does one thing, and that's grow. Of course, we've got Trump in office right now, and there's a lot of talk about shrinking the government and doing other things to protect, the American taxpayer. I think is what you'll really find is that one side will spend money on some things and the other side will spend money on other things.
They all spend.
But
Yeah.
ultimately, they're going to keep spending money, and they're going to keep spending more money than we have, which means they're going to have to keep creating money, which puts us in a good place to, if you're somebody that understands why you want to build an asset column, it doesn't matter if you're into gold, great. If you're into Bitcoin, great. If you're into stocks or bonds, I don't care. All that is fine. It's just for me, I don't understand those asset types as much as I understand real estate. The other thing about real estate, and the reason why I buy it, is because I can leverage in. I can borrow money or use seller financing or do other creative means to get my name on a lot more buildings than I would be able to get my name on stocks. And so I'm not an investor in the sense of the word that I go out and I make money in my day job, I pay taxes, I take what's left over, and I try to invest that into something that's going to provide for me in the future. What I'm doing is I'm going out, and my whole day job is to get my name on buildings and to borrow as much money as I possibly can to buy those buildings so that I can buy more of them, and I can use my own cash in order to handle capital improvements or to cover bleed or whatever the case may be, so that I can keep stacking more buildings into that asset column. And over time, what will end up happening is just gradually, year after year after year, I'm going to have more and more equity. And that equity is going to be something that I can tap in a way that I don't have to pay taxes. So in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, chapter 1, Kiyosaki says, the rich are no smarter than you. They just play by a different set of rules. The set of rules is called the IRS tax code, and it's 1,500 pages long. The first 7 or 8 pages tell you how to pay your taxes, and the rest of that book tells you how to not pay taxes. And I'm not somebody that's going to go read 1,500 pages, but I can tell you the secret to what the tax code says is it wants us to own businesses, and it wants us to own buildings. It wants us to create businesses so that we have W-2 workforces that are providing revenue to the government, and those people need a place to live. And so, and those businesses need a building to operate out of. So the government gives us tax breaks for being business owners and building owners. And so for me, I try to build a portfolio of businesses and buildings that's all real estate centric so that I get the tax benefits of owning both. Because I can go manage buildings and broker deals and do all this stuff, and I can make money over here, and my building depreciation can come in and cover up the profits that I'm making in my businesses. And so it all goes very much hand in hand. You'll hear me say on every podcast, we talk about now money, tomorrow money. And so the now money is very much income, whereas the tomorrow money is wealth. And everybody needs to be thinking about both. A lot of times people get stuck mostly in the income side. It's like, how do I go up the corporate ladder? How do I make more income? They're not really thinking in terms of every time I make $1, Uncle Sam is dipping his hand in my pocket and taking, his 30% or whatever. They're just thinking in terms of I need to make more and more and more and more and more. If you can think about how to make more and more without having to have that same tax exposure, you're way ahead of the game. So half of the battle is making it and the other half is keeping it. And when you say keeping it, it's not just about, oh, I'm good with my budget and I save money and I do all these things. It's about finding a way to limit how much tax exposure you have. It sounds very boring because most people are just like, well, I just want to make more money. It's like, yeah, we all just want to make more money. But the key is you got to make sure that that money that you're making is not getting stolen from you, right? And it's not just, you don't have a hole in your boat. That's, every time you're oaring that boat and you're just like pushing harder and harder and harder, but you're taking on water because, you just got something that's working against you all the time. So, yeah, I think that ultimately what you want to do is figure out, number one, how to build an asset column, whatever the case may be. But my favorite part when I said using other people's money, that's a Kiyosaki term also, to OPM, other people's money. Everybody's heard it. I'm sure that's listening. You can use leverage. And this is an interesting little math exercise we can do. So if I buy $1 million building and I pay cash for it, how much do I have to get that building to be worth before I double my money? $2 million.
2 million. Yeah. 2 million.
Okay.
Got it. Yeah.
Okay. So now what if I do the same deal, but I go to a bank and I borrow 70% loan to value? I put $300,000 down. I borrow $700,000. Now how much does the building have to be worth for me to double my money?
1.6.
1.3.
Did I?
Because I put
1.3, yeah.
Because my money is
your math testing me today.
Everybody does this. So I put $300,000 in of my cash. Now I got to make the building worth 1.3 to double my money. Now, what if I get the seller to carry a contract and he only wants me to put 10% down? Well, now I put 100,000 in. I only have to make that building worth 1.1. And I've doubled my money. You can't really play that game in any other asset type. You can borrow money in the stock market, and there's a way to leverage into securities as well. But to me, that's more gambling. In a real estate asset, to me, it doesn't feel like gambling because I'm on the hook for all that. Whether I put up my own million or I borrow the million, I'm on the hook either way. One of it's my cash, one of it's my name and my credit or my business or whatever, right? And so the cool thing about commercial real estate is what's called a capitalization rate or a cap rate. And my favorite equation is $100 equals $20,000. And what I mean by that is $100 of net income per month. If I raise one rent, $100, and all my expenses stay the same. So I'm getting $1,200 more net income per year on a 6 cap. Just take 1,200, divide by 0.06, and it's $20,000. So if I take, this is a beautiful thing. So let's say I go buy a deal. It's $1 million deal. I put $100,000 down. All I have to do is find a way to make $500 more per month in net income, and I just double my money. $500. And I double my money like that.
And an important piece of this for our listeners, correct me if I'm wrong here, but you're just to be clear on what you're buying, you're not buying stuff where they're already, I mean, in some cases you might buy stuff that's already at market rents if you can stretch out the debt a long time and let market rents grow. But in most cases, you're buying stuff that's value add, right? Where either rents are low or you can raise the rents quickly by doing a turn of some of the unit. There has to be a value add opportunity, generally speaking.
I am a value add buyer, but I don't only buy value add. I will buy turnkey.
You will? Okay. I didn't realize that.
New development stuff. So think about it. Like, I have multiple partnerships, and one of the reasons I've done multiple partnerships is because everybody thinks a little different about real estate. I wasn't really sure what my buy box was or what I enjoyed, and so I tried a lot of different ways. I've tried syndication, I've tried seller carry, I've done all sorts of different, I've done multifamily, self-storage, office, retail, land development, all the stuff. And so there's a few things I haven't tried yet that I still want to try that haven't happened, but I wanted to get in and test the waters and really see what it was about real estate that I like. And so for me, what I've realized 10 years in is that I I really like real estate that is operator to customer versus operator to business. So rather than a business to business that's in a retail location, office location, somewhere where you're dealing with brokers that have to do your leases and having escalators built in and having 5 and 10-year leases and that kind of a building. That's not really, I might do more of that as I grow. I have some buildings like that now, but it's not my favorite kind of building. My favorite kind of building is when it's more of a business to consumer type of real estate, like an apartment or a mobile home park or self-storage, something that has the end user is, I won't say not sophisticated, but they're a customer. Right? They're not, it's a different interaction between a customer and a business than it is when a business deals with business. And so for me, that's just the way that my portfolio has sort of led me. And I've discovered that about myself, that I enjoy that more than doing some of the bigger, class A, office buildings or retail buildings or things like that. Those don't make as much sense to me. But I'm a leverage buyer. What I want to do is for myself, for my clients, for our customers, for our employees, our brokers, I want everybody to be able to own more buildings. I think everybody needs to own more buildings, whether that's one more or 1,000 more, everybody needs to own more. And so what I look for is, how am I going to do that? Right? Because people go, well, I want to buy a building too, but I don't have the money. That's kind of where the conversation stops. It's like, well, I want to go buy a duplex. Today, a duplex is $500,000. If I go to a bank, they're going to want 30% down or whatever the case may be. So I got to come up with $150,000. Well, shoot, I only make $100,000 a year. I pay taxes. I pay my, for my life. And now I can only save maybe $10,000 or $20,000 a year. So what am I saying here? I'm going to wait 6, 7, 8 years saving up money to go buy my first duplex. I mean, that's literally what you would have to do if you were just going to be like, oh, I'm going to go make enough money to go buy real estate. So there are people who inherit a lot of money that go buy real estate. There are people, who inherit real estate that go buy more real estate. But for people who are just trying to get in, it's like, how do I start this? How am I going to build something from nothing? Well, when I started my portfolio, I had nothing. Like, I was starting to make money, finally brokering deals. I knew how to find deal, but I had to find a way to use other people's money to buy this deal. One of the first podcasts I was ever on, I don't even remember saying this, but somebody told me, they quoted this, and I said, wow, that's an amazing saying. They said, yeah, you said it, Gabe, on a podcast. I said, I didn't have enough money in my wallet to go buy buildings, so I had to learn how to buy buildings with my mouth. I had to use my tongue to go buy buildings. Like, I had to learn how to talk people into selling me their building with less down payment, or I had to go find the money somewhere to use as a down payment. I had to find money partners or hard money lenders, private lenders. I had to find the leverage somewhere because I wanted to own lots of real estate and I didn't have the cash to go do that. And so it's in your head. It's a mindset, and most people don't want to be creative. They don't want to think about the ways they could own the building. I keep saying Kiyosaki. I don't know why I keep bringing him up.
Gabe, do you think I think it's that, but I think also people just have a very different interpretation of what risk is than what you do. Like, and I've been through this learning from guys like you and Trevor and stuff that, like, if you told me 3 or 4 years ago, you're going to go do 110% leverage on a deal, I'd be like, that's reckless. Why would anybody do that? And so it is. Don't you think that's part of it too, is people can't wrap their head around that?
Yeah, and to be honest with you, in some cases it is reckless, and you can get in trouble. Leverage. Right. We call ourselves, when I'm syndicating a deal with other people's money. By the way, if it's if investor money, I'm a way different buyer than I am with my own money. Like, I'm willing to be way riskier with my money than I am with other people's money. And so we look at every deal is taken, from the lens of, is this a deal for me? Is it a deal for our fund? Is it a deal for my partners? Like, is it a deal for our clients or whatever? Like, there are a lot of different kind of buyers in the world that they're at a different age. They're all at a different cycle in their investment career. They may all have a different amount of liquidity or money they're willing to put into a deal. Some might be more bankable than others. Some might love leverage. Some might want to do cash deals. Some might buy it for cash flow. Some might buy it for appreciation. There's all these different ways that you can buy real estate. And so I think for me, if I'm going to say, if there's one thing, is I'm a leverage buyer. I'm going to try to buy every deal I can, and I'm going to try to buy it if I can with no money out of my pocket. And that doesn't mean you don't have to have money, because you got to show the bank you got money going in. Or else you're not going to, even if you're borrowing the down payment, you still got to tell your bank you got the down payment. So
Right.
you got to be able to show that it's in your bank account. That's one thing. You actually have to have money or access to somebody with money. And then after you close on it, guess what? You get to start writing checks. And if you don't have any money, you're going to be in trouble. So, I always like to say we play a no money down game is what we try to do. It doesn't always work, but, it's not a no money game. We actually have to have money to be able to do this. And you can get that money wherever you're going to get it. I mean, I started very small and started to build up a base and got some equity. You tap that equity, your duplex buys you a fourplex buys you an eightplex. There's lots of ways to move those parts around. When you talk about risk, like the way I measure risk today is that it's far more risky for me to not own buildings than it is for me to own buildings. And it's not because the risk in like, oh, I bought this building and now it needs a roof and I got to write a check for it. It's risky. The risk that I'm worried about is the way our economy is going in this house of cards that it's built on. Our deficit continues to grow. They keep printing more money. Like there's the dollar to me is at a lot more risk of losing value than my buildings are. It's much easier for them to hit the go button on the printer to print dollars than it is for me to hit the go button and print buildings. And that's the only equation I really need to know, is because everything inflates at a different pace. So education, healthcare, automobiles, TVs, whatever it is, when you look at the inflationary curve of everything, services, it all inflates at a different pace. Real estate is about a 1-to-1 with inflation over time. It's a really good 1-to-1 hedge against inflation. But like I was talking about before, your money is going down in value, and that's why you want to hold hard assets. You'll hear everybody say this, from Grant Cardone to Kiyosaki. They all talk about how you want to build a balance sheet. You want to have an asset column.
And if you look at history, like Weimar Germany is a perfect example of this, that, where inflation just ripped after World War I. And guess who actually did really well during that time is people that held assets. And that's why they say, like, inflation, the biggest inflation is a tax on the poor, because they're the people that are having to buy. It's a tax
on all of us. It's a tax on anybody that's using dollars.
But I guess my point is, you're not protected from it if you're not holding.
If you don't have assets. Yes.
Yeah.
If you were rich in just dollars, it would be
You're
a
screwed,
major attack on you. If I've got 50 million cash sitting in my bank, inflation is a bigger attack on me than a poor person.
Right.
But if I've got 50 million in assets and I'm holding just the amount of cash I need to operate my businesses, then that attack isn't on me. It's on, and why it's on poor people is because they only have a little bit of cash. They have no assets. And so what little they have is shrinking, right? And so that's why you want to have some cash, because you have to. It's the lifeblood of all business, but you don't want to have too much. It's one of the things I learned early on in real estate and talking to clients is, I'd always come from a survival standpoint, maybe even a scarcity mindset, where I thought, man, I've never had enough money. I need to have more money. And then I'm talking to these people who have plenty of money, and their urgency to get off of that money and get it into an asset was almost more urgent than the people who didn't have enough money, like me. It was really eye-opening to me to see that people were afraid of having too much cash. Like, in my mind, it's like, when I got into real estate, I'm like, I'm not going to be a collector of anything but money. I'm just going to stack my chips. And after a while, the light bulb came on. It's like, oh, that was stupid. Like, I'm not trying to stack money, cash, USD. I'm trying to stack buildings. I'm trying to put buildings on my asset column because buildings are real and cash is fake. The money is fake. And so we use it. We all decide that we're going to trade it. We're going to barter with it and do what we do with it. And we have to have it. But if you have more than 10% of liquidity of your total net worth, to me, you're being way over conservative and you're probably putting yourself at more risk because you're sitting on too much cash.
Gotcha. Hey, tell us about, so you reference back to bringing in partners on deals. And I know this because I know you decently well now and we've talked real estate. If I'm not mistaken, you've never done a deal without a partner.
I've never bought a single piece of real estate by myself.
I think I know the answer, but for our listeners, tell us why.
Well, if I'm being honest, when it started, it was just because I was too scared.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I didn't know, and I wanted to partner with people who knew more than me. And so I've always, when they say there's a few things that make up a good partner. One is money, one is time, and one is expertise. And so another one that I'll add in there is age. So I like to go find young guys that are smarter than me. If they could have more money than me, that's great. They can write a check. So it started with me and Brian. Brian was a little bit older than me, but he had way more money than me. He had way more experience than me. He probably had more time than me. He was a really, really great partner. Like, he didn't need me is the thing, right? I needed him. That's a great partner for me. I might not be a great partner for him.
Yeah. Why did he want to work with you so bad?
Well, we had a great relationship. We had a good bond, and he wanted to train me up and sell me his company. And he knew that I think for him, he knew that if I was an investor, it would make me 10 times the broker that I was before I was an investor. And he was right. From the moment I bought that first duplex, I never saw another deal the same way. It made me speak a different language. It made me carry myself with a different level of confidence. It changed the whole way I saw the world. And so that's in the SMI DNA. Like yourself, you're an investor. We don't bring on SMI brokers unless they are investors. Even in our residential team, we are promoting all of them to own their own real estate. Whereas most brokerages are like, they don't even care if you own your own house. They just want you to put your head down, make your calls, sell your buildings, pay them some splits. They're in business. They're smart business people. But I guess maybe the mission statement of SMI is quite a bit different because we're trying to help people own buildings. We're not necessarily in the business of just transacting. The whole reason for us to have the SMI machine is so that we can all own more buildings. And I just truly believe in my heart of hearts that real estate is the greatest wealth creation tool in the history of man. And I think that everybody needs to own more buildings. I encourage everybody to really put their minds toward it. Even if you're just going to buy a house or two or, a duplex or whatever the case may be, do whatever you want. Have some cash, have some stocks and bonds and all that. Just make sure that you got a few buildings in there. And I can almost guarantee you that your real estate in the end is going to make you more money than anything else does. And you're probably going to put the least amount of effort into it.
Yeah. I mean, we could do a whole episode about this, but just if you're listening to this, go do a quick Google search on how depreciation works. I mean, that's, you talked about the tax stuff, Gabe, but in a lot of cases, if you're working a W-2 in a high tax area, you have to make, I mean, I've done the math on this. I live in New York. You got to make Oregon, same thing. You got to make $2 for every $1 you would have to make in real estate in some cases. It is that drastic. On the partner piece, so you work with all different kinds of partners, right? You mentioned you like to work with the young guys. I know you got Trevor and Dane on your team, but then you do a ton of deals with, I've actually never met your other mentor besides Brian Paul, but I know you do a million deals with him too. Talk about what you learn from an older guy like Paul, who's been doing it longer than you, versus what you learn from somebody like Trevor or Dane, who are, guys in their 20s who you're doing deals with as well.
Yeah. So I believe everybody needs a mentor, and I think that everybody should also mentor other people. And so I've always had mentors throughout my life in the car business and in real estate. And currently today, I would call Paul Curley my mentor. He's one of my dearest friends, and he's like a second dad to me. Paul was one of my number one clients. Actually, he was my number one client. He really put me on the map. I found him early on in my brokerage career, and I said, well, what do you want to buy? And he said, well, I want to buy all of the real estate. And I was like, that sounds like a pretty good client to have. And
sorry to interrupt. What year did Paul start buying?
he's been buying for about 50 years, so
Okay.
in the 70s probably, but he only had a couple of things early on. It was really not until he was about 40 that he really kicked off his portfolio, and he's 75 today. So I would say in earnest, probably really the bulk of his portfolio was over the last 35 years.
And he owns what, 2,000 plus unit? He probably owns more than just about anybody in Oregon, right? At this point.
Yeah, by himself, he has almost 2,000 residential units. He's got probably 25 large commercial buildings. I don't know about in Oregon. Well, probably he's one of the top investors for sure in Oregon. And then he and I together have a portfolio of about maybe 50 million ish, something like, actually it's more than that. We just built a project that's worth almost 17. So, I would say, maybe 60, 70 million total that we own together now. But Paul is 75 years old. He's been probably the most influential person on my life. And a lot of brokers don't want to work with Paul. It's not because he's a great guy. I call him the Willy Wonka of real estate. He's super eccentric. He's awesome. When his vacancy goes up, he'll call me up and he'll go, man, I did this to myself. I was being too negative. I wasn't energizing my positivity. I wasn't putting enough good things into the world. Like, that's how he looks at the world. And I'm like, well, did you check your photos to make sure, the photos of the units are good? Did you, have you talked to your managers about doing some concessions? Like, I'm very much more on the science side of, like, let's figure out how to solve the problem. The first thing he looks at is himself. And he blames himself if things are going wrong because he feels like he put that into the world. And so, I learned from Paul, we spend every Thursday afternoon together and we talk, and 90% of what we talk about is not even real estate. It's just getting our heads right. And I will say, the old adage that it's lonely at the top. I will say that as you grow and you become more successful, your list of peers that you can relate to and that can relate to you sort of starts to shrink. And so you don't have as much in common. It's hard to have conversations even with maybe your own spouse or whatever, because you're starting to think about things on a different level. You're really diving deep into one world that may not interest them at all. And so to have a guy like Paul, one of the reasons we very intentionally meet on Thursdays, because by about Wednesday every week, we're both about ready to throw in the towel and go like, why in the hell are we doing this? Like, we both, I have a couple hundred people on my team. He's got 100 people on his team. We have thousands of doors. We manage over 5,000 doors. Like, this is serious business. There's a lot of moving parts going on and a lot of good and bad things that happen every single day. I sometimes joke that more good and bad things happen to me every day than happen to the average person maybe in a month or a year. Like, there's just so much going on. It'd be hard for me when somebody goes, how was your day? I'd be hard. I don't know. Like, I don't know. I think it was good. I think it was bad. And there's so many things happening. I just have to focus on the wins and keep moving forward because it's tough. And so by the time Thursday rolls around, we get together and we re-energize ourselves. And it's like, charging our batteries up, where we get together and remind ourselves why we do what we do. This is why we were put here to do this. And it's really important for us, both of us, to put our heads together. And sometimes, he's pulling me together, and sometimes I'm pulling him together, or sometimes we're doing it. We've gone out and done deals where we got ourselves in a lot of trouble, the two of us, and then we're trying to get ourselves out of a mess. And so we've just created a really special friendship over that time. But I've learned from him the spiritual principles of real estate, which we're going to talk about 2 nights from now at Investor Lab up in Portland. And it's very much about how you set your mind in the right direction, and how you react around problems, how you think about money. It's a little woo woo. It's a little out there. But it's kind of Napoleon Hill type stuff where, you subconsciously start to attract. There it is. Yeah. I'm reading, Outwitting the Devil right now. It's incredible. I lost your volume. Are you still there?
I bought it the other day because I heard you guys talking about it on Deal Junkies. I'm about just
Outwitting the Devil.
No, I got the first one, Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing. That book will brainwash you into being rich. I don't know exactly how it works, but Napoleon Hill is just the most prolific character, I think, of our generation. For him to leave us these writings, it's super important. It's all there for $20 or whatever you paid for the book. But, I think getting your head right is a big part of it. There is a scientific side of this too. And, you're talking about Trevor and Dane, and I mentor those guys. For me, what it is they allow me, they're always asking me questions the way I was asking Paul questions. And so I went to Paul when I first met him, and I said, I don't want to just be your broker. I said, I want to be the next Paul Curley. And that set our relationship off in a different direction. He, I think, was probably flattered by that, but I was serious, and I was asking him all the questions. Why do you do this? Why do you do that? What are your thought processes when you make this move or make that move? And Paul, to my surprise, he didn't know the answers to the questions that I was asking him. He didn't know why he did what he did. So part of what I did for Paul was I helped him understand why he is who he is and why he makes the decisions that he makes. And once he was able to think those things through, it started to teach me. And now you can almost not, like, the two of us share a brain. Like, if you gave us 100 decisions to make in a row, I bet you 99% of the time we would make the same exact decision, because he's completely rewired my brain to think like his brain. So then you got guys like Trevor and Dane who come and they ask a million questions, and they're just like I was with Paul, and they're hungry and they're young and they've got a ton of energy. What they give to me is they give me the gas in my tank to keep going. They energize me with their youth and their excitement. What I give them is I pass along the wisdom that Paul and other mentors have given me. And I have some life experience and some other things that I can share with guys in their 20s and tell them, they're thinking about going this way. And I'm like, well, you can, but here's what's around that corner, because I've already been around that corner before, And so it's fun to be able to take the knowledge and pass it through. And now these guys have connected with Paul, and he understands how the progression of things have happened. What's interesting is I've realized through the process that I am not the next Paul Curley. I was sort of a conduit, and Trevor Howard is actually the next Paul Curley. And so I found these two guys, one of them in his 20s and one in his 70s, and these guys both have the same instinct they were born with to go do what they do, and they're ultra smart. They could have done anything in life. They could have been, Paul was a real estate attorney. Trevor was an engineer. These guys are super bright guys that could have done anything. And they said, I want to own buildings. That's what I'm here for. And so anyway, I sort of act as a conduit, and I get to be the benefactor of it all, because I'm part of these partnerships that are out buying real estate. And quite honestly, I don't really have to do a whole lot. I might say, I love this deal. I don't really love that deal, or whatever the case may be. But ultimately, we've built a machine that is generating business to where I'm not out having to hunt deals every day. The deals are coming to me finally, which was the goal.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I talked to a lot of successful people, and it's all of this stuff around deal structure and how to run a business. It's not easy, but you can read about all of it in a book, and anybody can theoretically go do it. And I think the stuff that separates ultra successful people is the mindset stuff that maybe a few years ago I would have been like, oh yeah, like spiritual principles of real estate, like woo woo, that's, voodoo doll stuff or whatever. But it's so important, and it puts you in this headspace, like you said. And I think this is, I don't know, from the outside, one of the greatest strengths of yours is that like you said, in any given day, a million good things or bad things could happen to you. And it seems like, I know you said your Thursday call or Thursday meetings with Paul are therapeutic for that stuff, but it seems like you roll with the punches really well, and a lot of that probably comes back to these spiritual principles of real estate. Did you who did Paul invent those, or where did those come from in the first place?
I wouldn't, I don't know if he invented them. I don't even know if he knew what he was saying when he was saying them to me, but he is the one who gave me that wisdom. I wrote it down. Maybe one day we'll write a book about it or something, but that is typically what we spend most of our time talking about, is just relaxing around money and attracting, positivity through being positive. And, you can read about this in any of these books. It's not, I don't think it's anything new per se. And it's probably just stuff that he picked up over time. But that was the phrase that Paul gave to it, was the spiritual principles of real estate. I think he was, maybe I said it, I don't know, but I just sort of over time started, like there's one that we say, a good deal gets better and better and a bad deal gets worse and worse. There's all these things. There's a Deal Junkies episode about this where we talk about the spiritual principles. It's a fun episode. But there's these little things in the back of my mind whenever something happens, and in your day when things are going wrong. One of the most impactful things Paul has done for me is we've done so many deals together, both as partners and me as his broker, is, every single deal has drama. Every deal, some point in a deal, the shit hits the fan. There's 11th hour drama. Deals try to fall apart left and right all the time. You know this, just out doing deals. And when things are going like super sideways and you're just fully invested in something, like we've been working on this deal for months. It's what we're focused on. We're trying to get a loan. We're trying to get insurance. We're trying to find the money. We're trying to do all these things. And then you get to the end and you've got all these problems that you got to sort through before you get to the finish line. And I'd call up Paul, my heart's beating and I'm just feeling like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. What's happening to me right now? And, these sometimes are like multi-million-dollar problems, right? I mean, this is serious business. This is not for the faint of heart. And I pick up the phone and I call Paul. Paul, all right, are you sitting down? Here's what's going on. And Paul almost every single time just starts cracking up laughing. Just totally like, almost like he's giddy. Like this is what makes him happy. And
It's
I'm
a
like,
game. Yeah.
Paul, what are you laughing about? He says, well, it's just all part of the fun. And so what I love about Paul, I always talk about, he reminds me of, have you read Born to Run?
No.
You got to read Born to Run. You're going to love it. Born to Run is one of the best books I think ever written, but they talk about this Mexican tribe that runs, these guys run in loincloths like 60 miles a day to get to where they're going or whatever. And I can't, I think about running for like 6 minutes and it just, it's like, there's no way. If you snapped a picture of me after running for 6 minutes, I'd look like the most miserable person on the planet. But these guys will run for 60 miles in a day. They got these little, I think they're running almost barefoot. They're wearing
they're like Trevor and Dane, right?
They're like Trevor and Dan.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're inspired by these guys, but, they will watch these guys and they're running around, some cliff bank somewhere and they'll snap a picture of them. And they just say every single one of them just got like this shit-eating grin on their face. They're all so happy to be doing what they're doing. Like they don't look miserable at all. They're having fun. Like what they're doing is fun. For them, that's fun. And so I think of Paul in that regards when it comes to the way he does life and business is like, what he is doing is equivalent to running barefoot with 60 miles a day on dirt. You know what I'm saying? And he's just smiling the whole way. It's just all fun for him. And so anyway, I think that in business, in life, in real estate, you have to really remember that we're super blessed and lucky to be able to play this game, period. We're super blessed to be in America and to have the real estate market that we have, to have a wealth of knowledge, not only in the books like Think and Grow Rich and Rich Dad Poor Dad, but also you've got YouTube, you've got podcasts, you almost have too much information being thrown at you. It's amazing though that all the secrets are out there to give you, at least in what you need in terms of the education, is there. It's all available to you for almost free. You almost don't even have to spend money to do it. The part that is hard is that you have to change and you have to become something different so that you can go out and do what you want to do. And that's just leveling yourself up. Call it evolution, call it whatever you want to call it. But you got to get yourself to the place where you're ready. When I bought my first duplex, I wasn't ready to buy a 100-unit complex. But now that I own a 100-unit complex, everything smaller than 100 units seems boring to me. When I buy a duplex, I bought a fourplex last year. I haven't even gone to look at it yet. Haven't even seen it. I don't even care. It's like, is the thing going to make money or is it not going to make money? Like at some point, as you move up, things become, less and less exciting. And if you're truly a deal junkie, that's going to be part of the problem. Is you're not going to be getting high on the duplex anymore. You're going to want something bigger, and that's good. You'll grow into 10 units and 20 units and 30 units, hopefully over time. There are people out there that are more normal, like my mentor Brian. He hit a certain door count. He got his cash flow he was looking for. He paid his properties off, and he said, real estate did for me what I wanted it to do, and he stepped out of the game. Recently in retirement, he decided to sell me one of his buildings, and he went in 1031 into a bunch of houses in the Midwest somewhere. So he's still a little bit in the game, but he's always looking for cash flow. He's a low risk, low leverage, I love cash flow guy. So I got to have these two guys mentoring me that were really on opposite ends of the spectrum. One of the things I realized is that investors all have their own way of doing it, and they all think their way is the right way. It's one of the reasons I had so many different partnerships, is because I wanted to see all the ways and try to figure out who I was in the process. And so it was great to have these two guys that I really looked up to that really were on opposite ends of that spectrum. One was, super risk averse, and one was a cowboy. One was, no leverage. One was all leverage. Like it was on opposite ends of the spectrum. And I became sort of a combination of the two of them. I'm not quite as cowboy as Paul, but I'm also not as conservative as Brian. Part of that is because I'm 49 years old. I'm not at the age yet where I can be, because I'm still trying to grow something. At some point, I'll get enough built to where everybody moves eventually from growth into preservation, to where you build, well, not everybody, but most people get to the point where it's like, well, now I have this and I don't want to lose it. It's big enough that I don't want to lose it. I always advise people, hey, I see people get $100,000 or $200,000 and they hang on to it with a chokehold. And it's like, don't chokehold $100,000. It's not enough. It's not going to get you what you need later on in life. If you got $1 million or $2 million or $3 million, okay, now we can start to talk. But don't start to put a chokehold on it. And so like in Paul's instance, he's worth a couple $100 million and he's out doing, if you brought him a deal right now, that was a $100,000 house, he would buy it. Like, he will just do a deal to do a deal. There is no deal too small. For me, I feel like it's a waste of time. I'm not trying to just hoard all of the real estate at this point. I'm trying to very specifically buy stuff that is going to create for me the life that I'm looking for. And you just make so much more money on 100 units than you would on a house, right? It's just the scalability of it. You get cheaper management, cheaper sale fees if you sell, better debt when you finance and refinance. Like, there's just so many benefits to owning bigger buildings that I think that everybody should scale up to the point of the furthest they can take it. And if you can't take it any further, then maybe it's time to partner, or maybe it's time to just pay off what you got and just sit on it.
Yeah, you talk about, people buying to live the life they want to live or get what they want out of real estate. And there's so many different ways to win. I mean, so you said 49, you got 1,000 units. I don't think you're going to stop buying deals ever, but it sounds like you're somewhere. I know you've talked about this on Deal Junkies, somewhere between your two mentors, Brian and Paul. I mean, what do you see is like, what's your perfect day or week or month going forward that you're like, man, I'd like to wake up and do this, but I'd like to have this free time? And what do you want to do in the next 10, 20 years with not just with real estate, but with life?
I think I'm already doing it.
Yeah.
I'm blessed to be doing what I want to be doing. I like having a lot of responsibility, but I don't like to work. So I like to be the leader and I like to be involved, but I don't want to have to, I want to be able to have an hour and a half to hang out with Matt and not have to be worried about answering, 50 emails. I still do a lot of work. I do a lot of email and stuff, keeping an eye on everything because there's a lot of moving parts. But I think for me, what I want to accomplish is I want to be, I want to have the freedom that everybody talks about to an extent, but I don't want to be bored. I'm more fearful of boredom than I am of like overextending myself or working too hard. So I always want to have the responsibility. I want to keep buying and building businesses. I want to keep buying and building real estate. What I would like to do is play the role that I enjoy. I want to run the businesses. I want to be high level. I want to help with the things I enjoy doing, like marketing and sales and the stuff that's really in my blood. And I want to leave some of the tedious other detail stuff to other people because that's not who I am. And I understand that. And so I've already built out really the partnerships needed for that. And the partnership I work the most in is probably the one with me and Paul, because I play the role of the young guy doing all the work. Well, we use his balance sheet to go buy what we're going to buy. So I'm taking that same idea, replicating it with Trevor and Dane and Mark Gallegos. We have a company called Stack Asset Group, and we can build, we can do creative structures. There's a lot of stuff. We can partner with people on deals. There's a lot of doors that are opened. And then my other partnership is, of course, through the SMI Fund Management Company, where we've started a 721 exchange fund, where we actually have several properties currently that are being contributed into the fund. And so it's very unique in the sense that it's not just for investors who want to bring cash in to invest, although they can. It's really designed for people who want to divest themselves from the day-to-day of running their properties and from the risk of the liability of being sued, the risk of putting their name on more debt, all the things I don't like about real estate. Real estate, I said, was the greatest wealth creation tool in the history of man. What it doesn't do is offer a lot of clean exit strategies.
Mm-hmm.
And so once you've built the wealth, you'll find a lot of people in their 60s, 70s, 80s who have more wealth than they ever thought they would have. They don't know how to access it, because what am I going to do? If I sell, I'm going to pay taxes, or I'm going to try to do a 1031 exchange, which means I've got to go find another deal and fight for deals on the open market, which I'm not really interested in doing. Or I got to carry a contract for somebody, which may be a very valuable way to do it. We help a lot of people retire by having them carry a contract, but now they're a bank and they take on a different kind of risk. And so, what are the options that somebody really has? A lot of them just die and pass it on to their heirs. Their heirs get a stepped up in basis. The heirs go sell the property, take the cash, and blow it. And it's gone, and it's over with, right? So it's like, why did you build up all of this wealth to not use it and just leave it to your heirs to go blow it? I think that's a horrible plan. And so a 721 exchange allows people, it's IRS tax code 721, that book I told you about, that's 1,500 pages long. And if you look up 721, and it'll tell you you can exchange your equity in your property for shares of a real estate fund. And so that's what we do. Somebody owns a fourplex or whatever they own, and they say, hey, this is great. I have a good amount of equity here, but I don't want to take on debt to pull the cash out. I don't want to sell and pay taxes to pull the cash out. I don't want to really sell on contract, because now I'm not pulling cash out. I'm just replacing my income stream every month and taking on a different kind of risk. So the 721 allows them to say, okay, today I own 100% of my fourplex. As I contribute that into the SMI Legacy Fund, I now own a small percentage of a big portfolio of properties that are managed locally here in the Northwest by a company that knows what they're doing. We've been around for 50 years. So we have the management arm, we have the brokerage arm, we have a lending arm. We're able to transact much easier than the average person out there who owns a building, especially if you're a smaller investor that owns something like a fourplex. So we can turn that equity very quickly into bigger buildings, and now you get to trade into an institutional grade assets by just coming into our fund and letting us do the work for you. And of course, if we do a really good job, we pay ourselves a bonus, and that's called a promoted interest. That's what syndicators do. But chances are we don't take a dollar until you're making at least what you're making now or greater before we even get to take our payday. And so it's a wonderful way. It's a machine. It's a tool that's used to pool resources together so that we can go do bigger deals. So me and my partners are putting our assets into this fund as fast as we can, because we know that as more assets come in, we're going to be able to move those pieces around. We're going to be able to sell, these to trade into those, and we're going to be able to start moving into those institutional grade assets that just perform way better, get way better debt, and just have much higher returns.
Awesome. Well, Gabe, you've been super generous with your time. I know you got to get out of here, and I actually have a dinner reservation myself here on East Coast.
You're in New York. It's 6
o'clock. My fiance booked us a dinner reservation, so I better not roll in late to that. So just two final questions for you that I ask everybody. You kind of answered this one because I know you're reading the Napoleon Hill stuff right now, but aside from that, anything, and it could be for entertainment purposes or, business learning purposes, anything that you're reading, watching, or listening to at the moment or recently that you'd want to recommend to our listeners?
I would say Outwitting the Devil is the only thing I'm listening to right now. I'm new to Audible. I'm actually new to podcasts. I never listened to a podcast before we started Deal Junkies. So
do you listen to your own?
We do. We go back and listen to them because I got to timestamp the funny things that I want them to put on the internet for the videos. And so I do listen to Deal Junkies. I listen to a little bit of Rogan and some other stuff, but, I think that you can overthink these things and you can spend a little bit too much time. There's too much content to consume. And I really think that if you're going to do deals, at some point you just got to go do deals. It's good to talk about deals, but you can't just talk about doing deals. I would find people like myself, like yourself, that are willing to have a phone call or a coffee meeting or a lunch meeting or a dinner meeting. Go buy those people a coffee and say, hey, how can we get together, or set up a Zoom call, do whatever. There are a lot of people out there that are willing to help you. And you probably need to have some idea of where you want to go or what your ideas are so they can help you. But I think you get a lot more out of having a conversation with somebody who's actually done it. It's good to have the frame of reference by reading those books. The only books you really need are the Bible, Think and Grow Rich, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and you're probably good. I mean, I think you can be done right there, quite honestly. I don't know if you need anything else. I do read some books. Usually I'll get about halfway through and I stop because I get the gist of what it is I'm reading. But I just recently started Audible, so maybe the kids are telling me, Trevor and Dan are telling me, hey, just listen to your books and then you don't have to read them. So I'm giving that a shot.
Yeah, like we always say, I mean, action is the highest form of intelligence. So you can.
That's Napoleon Hill.
Yeah, it's Napoleon. Exactly. I mean, it's definitely okay to learn. I've noticed with myself personally, when I started out, I would just I must have listened to 300 Bigger Pockets podcasts and read books. And these days, all my reading is I like reading history and stuff. I don't even read business or real estate books because I'm I just need to go do the thing. I'll let and I'll listen to Deal Junkies because I love listening to you guys and it's the market I invest in and everything. But besides that, I don't consume a whole lot of real estate or even wealth related content. Okay. Final one for you, Gabe. Anything that you would, like to plug or tell people where to follow you, or if you want to tell people where they can go if they're interested in your, and put some real estate into your fund, anything you'd like to shout out, go for it.
Yeah. So we have a website. If you're interested in knowing more about the legacy fund, you can go to the smilegacyfund.com. You can also check us out at smifundmanagement.com. It talks a little bit more about some of our single asset syndication. I mean, we are taking on cash. We have investors that are coming in with capital that want to come into our deals, but we have 6 properties right now that we're onboarding. I don't know how many we've been around for a couple of years now, and we're just getting ready to explode, I think. And so we expect our real estate schedule to probably go north of 100 million this year. And that's pretty substantial for something that's fairly new. So we think that we will double that every year, at least for the next 5 years. And so we should be $1 billion fund here by the end of the decade. And we're very excited about where this can take all of us. I think it's going to be, the brainchild behind this is Logan DeVos. You should have Logan on your podcast.
I listened to the Deal Junkies. That guy is a superstar. Like, he is such a crazy mind. I love that episode.
He's the most brilliant real estate mind I've ever met, beyond even my mentors and the people who taught me real estate. And I should give credit a lot to Logan, because I consider him more of a peer and a friend, but he is a mentor too, because we just sit and have conversations for hours about things, and I learned so much from the way his brain works. But I've never met anybody else in real estate that thinks the way he does. He is wise beyond his years. You guys would have a absolutely fantastic episode, and I'm sure he'd love to do it with you.
I would love to have him on. So, guys, Gabe, thanks for coming on, man. I know you're running multiple businesses. We didn't even mention SMI just expanded to more states as well. That happened the other day. We were talking about so much other stuff, but
I told you, though, I don't want to work, though. So this is more fun than going to work.
Yeah. Well, that's a credit. Your business, you built a business where you hire the right people and trust them to do their job, and you're able to have time for yourself like this. So anyway, Gabe Johansson, everybody, Gabe, thank you so much for coming on the Saucetown Investor. It's been a privilege to have you on.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
That is a wrap for today's episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Saucetown Investor. If you got value from this, drop us a comment and let us know your thoughts. Did you have a big takeaway? Is there a topic you want to see us cover next time? Is there a guest you want to see interviewed? DMs are open. Business is at Saucetown Properties, and my personal, you can DM me personally, is at The Real Matt Cox 4. We'd also like to ask you kindly to please like and subscribe. You can also follow along with the Saucetown Investor blog. That's mattcox444.substack.com. Thanks again, guys, and until next time, keep investing and stay saucy, Saucetown.